Good. Have a seat. I think we're gonna go ahead and get started. Folks at home, we will be getting started momentarily.
Just looking at my. I'll be out in our neighborhood.
Last hurrah, stuff like stuff. Oh, yeah.
Weather, be like the most outside there.
Yeah.
Was really nice. So just change the date and. Like, honestly, plans.
Right. That's right. He's-
So you.
We got into it.
Yeah, at this point, it seems like so.
It just shows the boxes. Like,
For months.
Yeah. It's critical at the time, yeah.
I know, and even though I have about 90.
Oh, yeah, that's probably gonna stick with me. Yeah. That's it.
Like,
I always wanted like. Really cares, like tough, like.
I used to.
Yeah.
Tell for. Yep. Hey, that name gives me nervous. That name.
You know, well.
Okay, citizens of the 52nd Assembly District. I'd like to call our October general meeting to order. Everyone could pay attention. If you can hear me clap once. No, I'm kidding. You don't have to. I appreciate it though. Well, welcome everyone to our October general meeting. It's already October, but we are getting election season is underway. Early voting starts in just a few short days, which is crazy, October 28th. They aren't coming in. So wanted to start off by saying a big thank you to all the folks that came out to the Atlantic Music a couple weeks ago. We had an incredible turnout, not only from IND members working the table, some new faces at the table, which was great. But we also signed up, I believe, 44 new people to the email list, which is amazing. We got some new members. It was wonderful. It was also probably the best weather day we've had all fall. I got a sunburn. Yeah, I got a really bad sunburn. But it was well worth it because it was great to see the community out and about, especially since the year before it was a complete washout and we were up to our ankles in water and flooding. So it was a really great celebration. And good to be all together in community. So thank you for all the folks who showed up and stopped by. Really appreciated that. Another thank you goes out to all the people who have been joining IND alongside the Justin Brennan campaign, taking the R train all the way down south. We've been doing some really great work. Wanted to spotlight a few people who have really gone above and beyond, gone down there a few times. So Seamus, thank you. Down there to
You.
Oh, well, me.
You, yes.
A lot of us have been out there and supporting Justin's campaign. And when we go and talk to people, I think it's really inspiring because little does this actually happen up here in the 52nd Assembly District, where we actually have the opportunity to talk to an undecided voter or somebody who's not sure yet or maybe know where they're leaning. But I had the personal experience of knocking on somebody's door. I was there to see, according to my walk list, a woman who was 44, but a man who was older than 44 answered the door, and he said he was really torn. He knew both of the candidates, and then I think I was able to convince him to vote for Justin, which was really incredible. And seeing the persuasion at this point in the campaign, it's not all about persuasion, it's going to be really about turnout. So making sure that not only the Democrat registered voter is going to turn out for Justin, but whoever that older dude in her house is going to turn out for him as well. So I definitely encourage you to come out to our next day of action, which is Saturday, October 28th, which is also the first day of early voting. And early voting, we're going to do a big day of action there with our friends at CVID, the Brooklyn Young Dems, and the Bay Ridge Dems. So it's going to be a really great day of action. I really encourage you all to come out as well. And speaking of early voting, there's another candidate in the room that we have the opportunity to vote for. I know, folks over here have been doing, subway stops with you. Do you want to come up and say anything for a sec? Just to put her on the spot a little bit. But I know she's done so well that she's ran her Tom cards. There's a really good problem.
Yeah, it was shocking and exciting. People are really interested in learning about the people that are running for Supreme. I mean, who knew? But I will happily talk to these folks about what my campaign is about. I think it's just a real testament to the fact that people don't know a lot about the judiciary. They're unclear as to how Supremes get selected in the first place. I get asked, well, when was the primary? To which I have to say there wasn't a primary. But people are really, really engaged. So I am going to be hitting a bunch of subway stops in the mornings in the coming weeks. And also like in the evenings too. So I hope some of you will come and hang out with me.
I'll just remind everybody that you are the only candidate of Supreme who is being challenged by a Republican, so it's really important that we check that box.
This is very, very true. I did decline the Republican and conservative lines, so I do have a Republican opponent. However, I will take this opportunity to point out, as Seamus indicated earlier, my opponent was found unqualified by both the Brooklyn Bar Association as well as the New York City Bar Association. I was found qualified by the Brooklyn Bar Association and the New York City Bar Association. I also went through the Legal Screening Panel, which is the queer Bar Association of New York State. I'm cautiously optimistic that I will be found approved. The last time in 2019, I was found highly approved. So I hope it will be a repeat performance soon. So thank you. Yes.
Great, well, thank you. We will definitely organize more. As well as early voting stops and whatever else you need us to do, we will be there with bells on.
Yeah.
Another thing I did want to mention that's not in our district, but very close to our hearts, is what's going on in Ohio with the ballot proposal 1. So I don't know if all of you know this, but I did go to school in Ohio, land of flat surfaces and corn. And it really got me, I was into politics before, but going to school in Ohio really got me engaged and really put the fight in me, because that was truly a place where you went door to door and it was like Democrat, Republican, Republican who was a Democrat, Democrat who was a Republican. But right now they, for those of you who've been following, there was an effort to essentially change the Constitution to not allow this ballot proposition to go forward that would ensure the right to access reproductive health care. So I know that's a topic that a lot of us are, probably the vast majority of us are very passionate about here. So the Grassroots Dems of Ohio, as well as a few other organizations, have been organizing phone banks on Mondays at 5:30. So I thought it would be really great if we could get a group of INDers together this Monday at 5:30. So this Monday on the 24th of October, and I'll do some phone banking together to the great state of Ohio. 404 area code. Yes, Steve.
Just, you know, to be relevant is that Ari Kagan came out yesterday and said that after, years of supporting abortion rights, now he's running as a Republican. He said that he is
Elective abortions. Yeah, he did say that. So, yeah. Oh, yes, Sharon.
Okay. No, I just wanted to say, my experience with phone banking up until now, and I think maybe many others who have done it, is that if you get to talk to 5 people in 2 hours, it's a lot. I phone banked for Ohio back in the summer, and in 1 hour, I had 45 phone calls picked up.
That's incredible.
It was amazing. People in Ohio answer their phone. So it,
So flat.
so just saying.
There you go. That's an opportunity in that sense. So I hope all of you will join us on Monday, the 24th, and we can get a good group of INDers together and do phone banking. Maybe we can organize a Zoom so we can all see each other as we're phone banking, because I know it's good to do it with partners. So Hal, yes.
What's the Jill Biden event?
The Jill Biden event. Yes. The Jill Biden, the First Lady is coming to New York, and there is an event happening on Monday as well, actually, Monday, the 24th.
There might be a conflict. Maybe you should do.
There might be, though. I don't know how many low dollar tickets are still available. Not to make assumptions, but the tickets can range to like $3,000. But I think there was some low dollar tickets.
Still cheaper than the county
That
dinner.
is true. It is cheaper than county. But yeah, I'm not sure of the time. Do you have the time on the?
The time is not, time and location are not being revealed right now because of security concerns. So anyone who signed up, they will get a notification at least 48 hours before.
So yeah, if you signed up and can go to that, and then phone bank next week, because it's every Monday at 5:30. Yeah, I was just thinking we can do it all together as a group and be in community, but yes, FLOTUS is coming to town. That's always fun. And you can learn more about that event by going to indbrooklyn.org and checking out our calendar. You can click in and see all the info there. Okay, I think that's enough club business for now. I did want to talk about the formation of the Assembly District Committee. Yes, sir.
Before you do that, we have another candidate who's running.
Oh, Rena, hi Rena. Hi back there. Yes, we have another candidate who's running for surrogate. So do you want to come say hi?
Sorry.
Civil, I'm sorry. Oh gosh, for civil court. Yeah, do you want to come say hi?
Hi, everyone. Nice to see you. And I'm just really excited to hear more about the informational meeting tonight for the ballot proposal. So I'm really excited.
Awesome.
Anyway, good to see everyone. Talk more later. Yeah.
And for those of you who don't know, you're running unopposed, so less voting. It's all hard, but easier time at things, but we work really hard for you in the primary, so great to see you. Thank you for coming. And thanks for flagging that. I did want to touch on the formation of the Assembly District Committee that a lot of us who are on county committee are part of, but I will put a pin in that because I want to get to our speakers. And then, as a lot of you know, the president will be speaking at 8. So I think some of our members want to tune into that. And if we wrap up in time, no promises, though it is an IND meeting, we'll switch over to that. Okay, so first I want to introduce our speakers from the Center for Community Alternatives. And Katie is here, as well as Sharon. And Katie is the Director of Advocacy and Organizing. And Sharon is a CCA member. And y'all reached out with some really exciting stuff going on sentencing reform. And we invited you to speak here because we heard from the RAP campaign just a few short months ago and were able to help them out. So wanted to invite you here to give your spiel.
Nice to see all of you. So my name is Katie Schaefer. I work at CCA Center for Community Alternatives. And we're really excited to talk with you about some sentencing reform work that we are doing. As folks may know, New York sentencing laws were created in the 1970s Rockefeller drug law era and the 1990s quote unquote tough on crime era and have basically not been changed since then. They are draconian, they are racist, and they've contributed to the explosion of mass incarceration in New York State. And so we have been working with national organizations, with local groups, with policy experts. Across the state on 3 sentencing reform bills to address some of the worst excesses and injustices of New York sentencing laws. Assemblymember Joanne Simon is a co-sponsor of these bills. And Senator Zelnor Myrie, who I think are some people's senators, is the lead sponsor on one of them. And so we were excited to come and be able to share a bit with you all about the campaign, about the bills, about the impact on people's lives. And so we've got a short video to show you first. Then I'm going to talk a little bit about the legislation, and then Sharon will talk about the
Hear it, but not see it, friend. You have to put it on the screen. For it.
Oh,
Yeah. Sounds nice.
they rewind it.
I have this memory of me as a child, somewhere around 4 or 5 years old, and going to school and mentioning to my classmates that I had visited my dad in jail. My father was a young dad to 2 children under 3 years old. He was sentenced 7.5 to 15 years, but that was a norm in the community that I was living in.
Black and brown people in these communities get arrested more often. They have more convictions and end up spending more time in prison due to the sentencing laws in New York State.
It was like, what, 2 weeks after I turned 17, I was incarcerated. You know, I didn't even enjoy the blessings of being 17.
At the age of 20, although I had never spent any time in prison, I was staring at the possibility of never ever making it out.
When I went into the prison in 1984, I wasn't sentenced for the nature of my crime. I was sentenced because of the color of my skin. New York sentencing laws are fundamentally racist in nature, and Black and brown people get longer and harsher sentences because of mandatory minimums and prior convictions. Since Jim Crow days, Black and brown people have been targeted for mass incarceration. But it's only been within the last 50 years that the sentencing structures have created this crisis of mass incarceration that we're in today.
My father's long sentencing was the result of the over punitive Rockefeller drug laws. What could have been a shorter sentence of anywhere from 1 to 3 years wound up being nearly a decade.
The Rockefeller drug laws are created to be harsh on drugs, but what they did was left remnants of 2 and 3 strike laws and mandatory minimums that are still in place today. A mandatory minimum is a sentence that a judge is required to impose, whether or not he feels there are mitigating circumstances. The judge may want to impose a lesser sentence, but can't do so.
When I entered the system, the minimum sentence was 15 years to life. The judge thought that was too much. He wanted me to plead guilty to a reduced charge, but he needed the prosecution to agree with it. And they refused.
The prosecutors will dangle these heavy sentences over your head and expect you to play ball and take a plea bargain. If you have a prior conviction, you face New York State's 2 and 3 strike laws, which means that you face even harsher mandatory minimums than you would have before.
The prosecutor has entirely too much power. These long-term sentences, you destroy a person, you take all kinds of hope out of them.
And yet the attitude in the public has shifted. The public is aware of the damage that mass incarceration has caused, but our sentencing scheme still reflects the failed policies of the 1990s.
Even in our own communities, it's the fear that the law will not be implemented fairly.
Over the past 50 years, New York State has been building this system of mass incarceration that has been disproportionately carried on the backs of Black and brown people. And it's time for us now to dismantle that system of oppression. Communities Not Cages is a statewide campaign building the power of people and their families who've been impacted by mass incarceration to overhaul New York's racist and draconian sentencing laws. We are fighting to eliminate mandatory minimums so that prosecutors won't have the ability to coerce plea deals. We're also fighting for a second look.
Second look legislation is going to allow folks who serve a certain amount of time in prison, no matter what their sentence might be, to petition a judge for recess.
It's time for judges to be able to go back into these sentences, take a second look at what a person's conviction was, and find out if they're still in alignment with what the sensibilities of society are now. A young person that went in at 21 and comes out at 45 is not the same person, and they have learned, they've evolved, they've grown, and instead of just being subject to punishment, their time should be meaningful. And good time and merit time are things that a person earns while they're there, while they're changing their lives.
There are people that are being held in prison who have atoned. They can be out here in society, helping us do a lot of the work that we do.
My father's incarceration robbed my sister and I of the father and daughter relationship that we deserved. And it took over a decade to reestablish that relationship after he was released from prison.
There are no throwaway people. People can actually commit a crime, but another word for crime is mistake.
You don't have to lock everybody up and put them in a cage.
What the Communities Not Cages campaign is going to fight to do is to incarcerate by ending these draconian sentencing laws and invest in community-based programs that actually bring safety to our communities. Nothing has ever changed. No legislation, no oppression, nothing has ever changed until the voices of the people who have been mostly impacted say, we're not going to take it anymore.
So I want to mention, is this now on? that Darnell, who was one of the people who was interviewed, who talked about facing a 15-year to life sentence that the judge couldn't go below the mandatory minimum, is now a second-year law student at Yale Law School. He was part of the initial policy working group drafting these bills and is a truly amazing human being. So we have a couple of slides. So I'm just going to quickly sort of run through the legislation that was talked about in the video. So these are 3 bills in Albany. The first bill I'll talk about, and we can just go to the eliminate mandatory minimum slide, is the Eliminate Mandatory Minimums Act. So this is sponsored by Senator Zelnor Myrie and Assembly Member Demond Meeks in Rochester. And this is legislation that would eliminate mandatory minimum sentences. It wouldn't change maximum sentences. Judges would still have the same range that they currently have. But it would mean that a judge could look at mitigating circumstances, and that Darnell's case could say, I don't actually think this mandatory minimum is just given the individual facts in the case, and could sentence accordingly. The other thing that really matters, and the sort of other really harmful impact that mandatory minimums have, is in the plea negotiation process. That in New York, 98% of convictions come through guilty plea rather than through trial. And there's a whole constellation of laws and policies that contribute to that. But a piece of that are mandatory minimum sentences. And you can imagine why, that if a prosecutor charges somebody with a mandatory minimum sentence of 10 years and then offers a plea deal of 2 to 4, people are really inclined to take that plea deal, whether or not they've done what they've been accused of, whether or not it's a fair sentence, because otherwise, if you roll the dice and you go to trial and you lose, the judge wouldn't have the discretion to say this 10-year sentence is too long. So that's what the first bill would do. The second bill is the Second Look Act. This is legislation that would allow incarcerated people to petition a judge for a resentencing hearing. It would allow judges to look back at somebody's sentence to see, is the sentence still just? Is it still necessary? Right now in New York State, there is no mechanism for a judicial review of a sentence. So even if a judge who had imposed the sentence no longer thinks that sentence makes sense, there is literally nothing that can be done. And we have heard and are currently working with mostly retired judges. Judges currently on the bench are a little bit more shy about talking about pending legislation. Who have talked really powerfully both about the need to eliminate mandatory minimums, who have talked about sentences they themselves have imposed that they did not think were just, but who have also talked about the need for second look, that there are sentences that at the time they did what they thought was right. And in retrospect, because of changes in laws and policy and our understanding of neuroscience, of brain development of young people, of addiction science, of mental health, or because of the rehabilitative efforts of that person, that they don't think that sentence is fair or necessary anymore. And there is no mechanism for that kind of review. This is an issue across the country, and we've seen second look bills introduced and passed across the US. They passed in 4 states so far, as well as Washington, DC. And somebody who received relief under DC second look bill, who went to jail as a 17-year-old, is now part of working for the Sentencing Project and is part of the campaign. This bill and the other 3 bills have all been endorsed by the American Bar Association for sort of not just in New York State, but sort of at a national level, what it looks like to start to address some of the injustices of sentencing laws. And then the final bill is the Earned Time Act. This is legislation that would seek to reorient our system away from just warehousing people for as long as possible and towards rehabilitation. That one of the things that happened in the 1990s as fallout from the federal 94 crime bill was a cutting of state and federal financial aid for incarcerated college students and a decimation of earned time opportunities. And so the theory was, rather than give people a chance to get an education, to do workforce training, and then to be able to work towards getting home, that we're just gonna keep people in prison for as long as possible with as many programs as possible. And we have made some progress towards reinstating college and prison programs and other kinds of rehabilitative programs, but we have real work to do. And earned time programs are part of that shift. New York is really dramatically behind in this front. There's states that we consider really regressive, like Alabama and Oklahoma, that have more robust earned time policies than we have in New York State. So these are the three bills. They address the Rockefeller drug law era that created this system of harsh mandatory minimums, the 1990s, and the decimation of access for people to be able to earn time off their sentences, to transform their lives. We hope you all will support it. And I now want to pass the mic to Sharon, who's just going to talk very briefly about the impact of these bills and why they matter, particularly for families.
Thank you, Katie. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for giving me this opportunity to come and share with you about my story. My journey began in 1994 when I sat before a judge with my brother and my mom, and he sentenced my brother to 3 consecutive 15-year sentences for robbery, a nonviolent crime. And one of the sentences based when he was 16 years old, that he was coerced into taking a plea deal and basically lied to. He was promised, a judge promised him if he took the plea deal, they would do X, Y, and Z. They did not do it. But at the age of 25, when he sat before that judge, this is when the 3 strikes that you're out was implemented. They used that to give him 3 consecutive 15-year sentences. Now, my brother, as I remember my brother, growing up, 6 children of a single mom. My brother went through a lot that we didn't even know about until a couple of years ago. But all I can say is we all know, as we are growing up, we go through life challenges. Sometimes we make bad decisions, but I can honestly say that my brother has a heart for people. He made some big mistakes, but it doesn't warrant 45 years to life. While he's been incarcerated, he's in school, he's studying paralegal, he writes his own papers, he writes his own motion, he's helping everyone in prison. Today, actually, he's in Green Haven, and there was a huge incident that happened within the last 2 weeks with one of the correctional officers, and they pretty much shut the whole prison down. No one can go and they can't call out. But one of the women within the community, she went to see him. And she said to me, she called me, I've never met her, he's never met her. And she said, your brother is a very pleasant young man. And as I was leaving that prison,
Sorry about that.
that's okay. She said, as I was leaving, one of the visitors came to her and asked her, is that gentleman Eon? His name is Eon Shepherd, by the way. She said, yes, it is. Yes, it is. She said that young man has been a blessing to my family member. He helps everyone. And I always say, when my brother comes out, I know he's going to be just a blessing to CCA and so many different organizations. The reality is, even behind bars, he's been helping so many different individuals, writing motions. A lot of them has been released and even trying to help him. But I thank God for the Second Look Act. That's one that caught my attention. But my brother, actually, his sentencing was wrapped around all 3 of them. The bills are so important. Like Katie was sharing, we have to take a look at all of these bills because the draconian laws that they had in those days, it really doesn't apply today because we've all made mistakes. in our lives. And don't you think you deserve a second chance? And it's not a second chance where the judge is just, oh, you can go. They're reviewing what they've done with their lives. My brother has been incarcerated for 27 years for nonviolent crime. Whether it was violent or non-violent, people changed. And I just want to thank you guys for allowing us to come and share these bills. And I want you guys to just speak to your assembly members. Encourage them to take a look, read, see what these bills are going to do. It's basically helping individuals that's incarcerated by these laws, mass incarceration, lengthy incarceration, 27 years to life, 45 years to life. But he's 55 years old now. He served already half of his sentence. But I thank you guys for taking the opportunity to listen and sharing what we have to share tonight. And if you have any questions, we're here to answer any questions. Thank you.
That was amazing. Thank you so much for sharing your story. It's, folks like you that really put the people behind this work, and we're so thankful that you were able to share your story and sharing all the amazing work that you've been doing. So I know I have a lot of questions, and this group is a very question forward group. So why don't you just come back up here? Let's start us off. Ira, go ahead.
My question is this a universal concept? And I'll give you an example. Okay, you rob someone, it's a nonviolent crime. You kill a cop, it's a violent crime. Are they going to use this to say, gee, you know what, you killed the cop, so we'll only give you 30 years, and then we'll think about it afterwards? I mean, I don't know if I'm in favor of, basically letting cop killers out.
So the bills don't require judges to do anything, right? So the Eliminate Mandatory Minimums Act wouldn't change the maximum in any way, wouldn't change the sentencing range they can currently impose. It would just allow them in cases where they saw mitigating circumstances and didn't think that sentence was fair, to impose a sentence based on the individual factors in the case. Same for the Second Look Act. It doesn't require judges to do anything. It simply provides an opportunity for a judge to have a hearing in a particular case.
Susanna.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for sharing. Just two questions. One, because most of the people here have the same assembly member. What else can people here do to help support those bills? Is there any way, other push or advocacy you need to the governor or other people in other parts of the state? And then also how this is not a question that I think you can answer, but just curious, like there has been so much the last few years since bail reform of misinformation in the media that is not tied to facts. And I know because I get your email alerts, which are always like fact-based and evidence-based, but how do we combat that?
Both very good questions. So I believe the legislator who you all engage on, who's not yet a co-sponsor of the bill, is Senator Gennardis. And so if folks wanted to help us with him, we would be deeply appreciative of that. In terms of the sort of the important narrative work, I think one of the ways that we try to do that is centering people and their stories. That one of the sort of things that happens in misinformation is the dehumanization of people. And particularly the racist dehumanization of people. And so we really try to center people in their full humanity. The facts and the data really matter, but most of us are moved by stories. And so we need to have the facts, we need to have the data, and we also need to be elevating people's voices to sort of share the experiences of them and their loved ones.
Maya, yeah.
Thank you so much. I'm curious kind of how you incorporate gender into your work. Women are, at least in the last statistic that I saw, one of the fastest growing incarcerated communities. And those are voices that we don't hear of as much and kind of unique struggles. So just curious about, and any thoughts you have on that, and how gender plays into it.
Yeah, it's a really good question. So I'll answer it in a couple of ways. One of the places where these bills build from is legislation that was passed a couple of years ago called the Domestic Violence Survivors Justice Act, which allows judges to sentence under a mandatory minimum in cases where the crime was directly connected to somebody's experience of abuse. And what we have seen in the implementation of that, and certainly there have been some people who have gotten relief under that law, is because of some of the ways that that's written, there's some real limitations of it. And so if you talk to the women who are incarcerated at Bedford or Taconic or Albion, many of them have been subjected to mandatory minimums. And this is true of both the women, but it's also true of people incarcerated in men's facilities too. That people have deep experiences of trauma and violence that have really not been engaged with, right? Nobody's, even in cases where somebody has done harm to somebody else, nobody's first experience of violence is perpetrating it. And so one of the things that this allows us to do is to really engage with people in their sort of full experiences. Many of the women incarcerated at Bedford and the other state prisons who have these long sentences are there on long sentences because of 2 and 3 strike laws and the mandatory minimums that come with them. Often for things that I think many of the people in this room would agree do not deserve the kinds of lengthy sentences that they are serving. And then the other way, and this is to Sharon and other folks' experience, is that in addition to the experience of incarcerated women, if you look at who is supporting incarcerated people and who are supporting families that have been torn apart by incarceration, it is overwhelmingly women who are making the 8-hour trek to go visit loved ones, who are trying to keep money on the unbelievably expensive commissary and telephone lines of their loved ones, who are having the experience of trying to keep their families together sort of after incarceration of a loved one. So that's I think one of the other places of gender.
Hi, yeah, thanks so much. It was a really, I was just wondering, because our system is so structured on incarceration, do you think we have the support system now, to make sure that they get the education they need, that they have the social skills they need? I mean, is that present right now?
So it's one of the things that we at CCA work on building. So I didn't talk at all about CCA more generally, but maybe I will take a minute to do it. So in addition to the organizing and the advocacy work that we do a whole range of community-based services. That is everything from we're opening a new youth center in Brownsville so that young people there have a place to go, have access to jobs and internships and supports, to an apartment building that we built and co-run with the Syracuse Public Housing Authority in upstate New York that is part affordable housing and part transitional housing for people returning home from jail and prison. We run reentry programs for people coming home, access to education, housing, jobs. And we advocate for there to be additional funding from the state to make sure that people have the resources they need. Do we think that there is sort of enough that for people? No, there should be more, right? And there should also be more on the front end, right? That people should have jobs and housing and education on the front end, not just on the back end. But a lot of that work is there. Many of our organizations are building that out. And sort of this is paired with that sort of how do we build strong and thriving communities and not sort of have a knee-jerk reaction to use the jail and prison system to engage every social ill, but actually address the root causes.
We have time for one more question.
I don't know if it was addressed in the video, and if I missed it, I'm sorry, but is the goal to eliminate all mandatory minimums across all categories of the penal law? And if that is the goal, given the current political climate in New York, where there's a lot of misinformation about what's going on, and Lee Zeldin came perilously close to actually winning last time based on either bail law, would it more politically better area to say, let's start with moving minimums from certain categories, then work our way up to try and get like a better, like, you know, half a loaf is better than none, and then we can move on and, you know, bring the people with us.
It's a very good set of questions. I'll try not to say that I also think Lee Zeldin came perilously close because we have a governor who ran a terrible campaign. But that to the side. So I think you are right that politically that is the most challenging of the three bills, and we are comfortable with the bills not moving together. That the Second Look Act and the Earned Time Act are politically easier bills than the Eliminate Mandatory Minimums Act, and that is true. And I think it's likely that those bills could pass before the Eliminate Mandatory Minimums Act will go through. You know, one of the ways that we think of doing legislative advocacy is starting with what we really want, because Albany always manages to chip things away. And so if we start with half a loaf, we end up with crumbs. If we start with a full loaf, maybe we'll get a half loaf by the time the negotiations happen. But I very much hear the sort of political point you're making.
Well, thank you. I know we've done resolutions in the past to help move our members to the right place. So it seems like this group is interested in helping out. Do I hear a motion for the executive committee to draft something up and bring it to the next general meeting?
So moved.
So moved. All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Opposed? Great. So we will get to drafting. And if you have anything to share to help us.
Oh, yes, I
not
can.
start from scratch.
Sharon, when I showed up, said you don't have any paper with you. Like, I came from home, I didn't come from the office. But yes, I will.
Okay, awesome.
Thank you.
And well, thank you, Katie, and thank you, Sharon, again. Name was invoked, and since he has to rush off for bath time, Senator Gernardus, and he'd like to come. Yes, hello, welcome. So since we were speaking of not the devil, but speaking of you, wants to see if you'd like to say, maybe, have you looked at these bills before? Have you thought of them? Do you have any opinions? Not to put you on the spot, but there you are on the spot.
So which, I only caught the tail end of Katie's discussion, so I missed which bills in particular that were being referenced. I heard something about mandatory minimums.
Yes, it is.
It is S321, that second look, S6471, that's eliminate mandatory minimums, and S774, that's the Earned Time Act.
And just to confirm, Joanne is on all of those already. Right? Yes.
I know.
Of course she is. Okay. There
I'll
you
have to see, I don't recall, I believe that my staff has met with folks either from CCA or legal aid in the past about the bills. I'll have to go back and double check where those conversations were and pull those bills again to see. I can't tell you for sure what without looking at them again, where if there were questions or issues, or if it just kind of fell by the wayside due to the just the morass of the legislative process or whatnot. But we will take a look at those three and then report back to you guys next month.
Thank you. But we'll give us other people. We do have another speaker on the ballot initiatives right after you, but I know you wanted to say hi before.
Yeah, great. So I'll be pretty quick. I had one political update and then one policy update. I'll do the policy one first. Just for those of you that didn't see it last week, I announced two new bills with the support of the governor and the attorney general that I have introduced with Assemblywoman Nili Razik from Queens. And these are bills that kind of build upon some of my earlier work around protecting kids on social media. And what we're trying to do with these two bills, the first one is called the Safe for Kids Act. It's the Stop Addictive Feeds Exploitation for Kids Act. This would say that social media companies could not use predictive algorithms to show content to minors under the age of 18 without express consent by a parent or guardian. so that they are not getting all of this content that they did not sign up to see. There is a mental health crisis amongst teens and adolescents, increase in depression, social anxiety, body image concerns, suicidal ideation, self-harm, and a lot of this stems from social media. And one of the worst practices that social media employs is the use of these algorithms, which, you could be searching for one thing, and then within 20 minutes, the rabbit hole ends up showing you things that are actually quite harmful to you, to yourself, and your self-worth and your self-esteem. And there have been really terrible consequences of that. So we want to regulate the use of these algorithms for minors and say that a parent has to consent to the algorithm being used. This is not going to shut down the internet for kids. This is not going to tell kids you can't find community through social media. You can't, look out for, look for information or whatever. This just says you have to get your content in a chronological order. So just the people you sign up to see. Think about Facebook the way it was like in 2006 and 2007, right? None of these crazy posts about people having cures for the common cold with like battery acid and cinnamon sticks that you never going like, why is this on my feed? How is this on my page, right? Just the people you signed up to see, just the accounts you want to follow. And this would apply to like TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, YouTube, Twitter, X, YZ, whatever they're calling themselves. And also related to this bill, it would allow parents and youth to turn off notifications overnight between 12 midnight and 6 a.m. Because what we heard from teachers actually is that kids are coming into school like zonked out because they're up all night waiting for the next notification, how many likes on this photo, how many this on that. And like 2 o'clock in the morning, you're a 13-year-old, you should be asleep, not looking at your notifications on your phone. So that's the first bill. Really hopeful and optimistic about this. You're going to hear a lot of opposition from the tech companies. They're going to say a lot of lies about it because this is their moneymaker. They want to keep your eyes glued on the screen for as long as possible, and the algorithm is what lets them do that. The second bill is the Child Data Privacy Bill, which would prohibit internet companies from collecting data of children and then selling it for a commercial purpose. So already under federal law, companies cannot collect data of children under the age of 13 without express parental consent. We want to expand that to 18 or under, but allow for teenagers and adolescents to give their own consent if they choose to allow a company to track them, follow them, whatever. I suspect that most folks won't because, again, this is how these companies make money. They take the fact that you like the color blue and you like Bruce Springsteen and pepperoni pizza, and they take that information, they sell it to third-party advertisers, and that feeds the algorithms all of a sudden that then shows you that content of like the battery acid and the cinnamon stick. So it's a vicious cycle. These are the 2 worst practices that social media companies use. We want to crack down on them. So hopefully I'll come back to you guys in a couple months with some really positive updates there. And having the governor and the attorney general both support these bills at the outset, right out the gate, is really helpful and really impactful. So that was the policy update. The political, I want to say thank you to all of the members of the club for coming out to help Justin these last couple of weeks. This is like my number one political priority, is making sure not just that we reelect Justin, but that we defeat the other guy who is just so bad and so wrong and just stands, every single value he holds is antithetical to the values that we hold as Democrats and as progressive Democrats. And so just deep appreciation for everyone that's come out, made phone calls, canvassed, done whatever. We have a couple weeks left to go. I think we have one more day of action scheduled with you guys. Whatever this club can do, you guys are no strangers to Southern Brooklyn, as you all know. It really is appreciated, not just by Justin, but by me personally. So thank you very much. And with that, I'm going to go start bath time. And I thank you all for indulging me. And I look to see you all soon.
Thank you so much, Senator.
Bye, guys.
Right. Okay, that was exciting. I'm all revved up about the election, which early voting again starts a week from Saturday, 10/28, which is when we'll be down in Bay Ridge with the Bay Ridge Dems and CBID and all of our friends kicking off early voting for Justin, as well as Carolyn Cohen, and doing the good work. But also on the ballot, sorry, little known fact, there's ballot initiatives. What? Who knew? Thank you so much, Katie. I was surprised. I consider myself a pretty engaged person politically. And then when I saw an article in Gothamist that there are 2 ballot questions, I was like, huh, I didn't realize that. I know absolutely nothing about them. So I invited a speaker that has been behind one of the ballot initiatives, which I'll call on him in just a second. Hi, Brian. Nice to meet you. But I wanted to start with the second ballot initiative, which is about sewers that nobody really knows anything about, except it happens every 10 years, happens unanimously. So I couldn't find a good speaker to engage with us on that one. I guess vote yes on that. But the first ballot initiative is a little bit more interesting. We wanted to introduce formally to the club Brian Fessler, who is the Director of Governmental Affairs for the New York State Association, School Board Association. So he's going to talk about the ballot initiative for the school boards and what he's working on. Over to you, Ryan.
Great, thank you very much. First, appreciate the invitation. I'm actually on the other side from the senator. I did my daughter's bath time right before joining in. So appreciate the flexibility for letting me join you all via Zoom. Yeah, so on the state ballot, in a few weeks is what's actually a second attempt at this, at a constitutional amendment dealing with the state's 57 small city school districts. So obviously outside of the big 5, any school district that is in an official state or an official city municipality. So this is as large as, the Albanys and Uticas upstate, but it's as small as here in the capital region, the city of Rensselaer. So you have some school districts, as small as just a couple thousand students. For those 57 school districts across the state, in every region, every sector of the state, they are bound by the state's constitution to a 5% limit for debt for capital projects. So 5% of essentially their property tax base, that is their maximum limit for debt. Every other school district in the state that operates kind of through the what's called fiscally independent process, so they levy their own taxes. All of those other school districts in the state have a statutory limit of 10%. Now, the easy question is, well, why is it different? Decades ago, small city school districts used to operate under a completely different set of rules, regulations, processes, where the voters in the community did not approve directly small city school district budgets, where they did for all other districts. But in the 80s and 90s, there was a transition via state law, basically to move the rules and processes for small city districts to make them match up with all the other school districts in the state, recognizing that, just because they fall within a certain municipal line, these are all school districts across the state basically doing the same thing. And so in 1997, small city school districts for the first time had their general budgets subject to approval by voters in those school districts, exactly the same as all other school districts in the state. But because for a number of years, they were not subject to voter approval, those budgets, I think it was in 1953 or 1950s or so, 51, state leaders put in the state constitution this constitutional debt limit. So basically putting in a check on finances because there was no direct voter approval. So now we'll flash forward to 2003, and there was an attempt to do what is being attempted now, to remove that constitutional debt limit in order to match up small city school districts across the state, representing hundreds of thousands of students, matching that debt limit to 10%, just like all other school districts. That attempt in 2003 was very close, but failed. It failed, I think, about 46% to 54%. And so since then, we've had this growing inequity for all of these 57 school districts and the hundreds of thousands of students they serve. They're operating basically in a completely different world of school finance with a focus on capital projects and facilities. And so we have this inequity based on a constitutional provision that was put into place, during the Cold War, based on a set of rules and circumstances that are no longer in place. And so there's been some attempts, to try to address this via statute through legislation, but because this is, pretty clear and straightforward in the Constitution, really the only way we're going to be able to provide equity for all of these hundreds of thousands of students across the state, in every area of the state, the capital region, Long Island, downstate, Western New York, the North Country, Central New York, the Southern Tier. These districts are everywhere. The only way we can provide that equity for those students now and for generations into the future is by approving this ballot initiative to amend the Constitution to match up their debt limit and their opportunities to be in, safe and modern buildings with all the other students across the state.
Great. All right, that was such a good explanation. Thank you. Any questions?
Who's against it?
Who's against it? That's a great question.
No one that I know of. It's a good spot to be in, but really, what we feel like we're, trying to overcome is one, obviously this is a non-presidential year, a gubernatorial legislative state election. And so attention is one thing. So that's why I'm, very pleased that you all reached out to, have me here today, this evening to talk about this. I think the other piece is, for folks who especially, may not have children or nieces or nephews or kind of any connection to schools or school-age children or, relatives who are teachers, et cetera, this can feel pretty abstract. And so you may not feel invested in the issue. Obviously I'm at where I'm at, and I'm sure many of you, care deeply about the value of public education, for our students now and into the future. So we're hoping to build on that. I think the other thing, that we are conscious of, and I say me, the many groups who've been active in advocating for the past number of years, anytime there's a state vote that has the word debt in it, I think we understand that can elicit a negative reaction from some folks. But this does nothing to automatically increase debt. This does nothing to automatically increase taxes. It's simply a matter of equity. We want to make sure, as I said, the students in these 57 districts statewide have the same opportunities, to be educated in a safe, secure, and modern facility and classroom buildings as all the other students in the state. So I have not heard of any group coming out in opposition to this, but I think it's just a matter of education and sharing the message about why something kind of technical and nuanced like this is so important for the students in our schools now and for years into the future.
Great. Any other questions? So I think if I was to explain it to a neighbor or a friend, I would basically say, if you like equity for schools across the state, you should vote yes. Am I summing that up in a second?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, equity for schools and students. Ultimately, our schools serve students, academic, social, emotional needs. And so we want to make sure these, equitable opportunities via facilities and classrooms are available, on an equitable basis for all students.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for joining us. It was a lot.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
I think we can all confidently now go into the polls once early voting starts, knowing just a little bit more about what's actually we're voting for. So thank you for that. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, So speaking of elections, we talk a lot about elections. We are a political club. There is one that's very exciting for a friend of the club, not this year, but next year. So she wanted to swing by early to announce her candidacy for our neighboring district in the 44th, the president of CBIB, Diana Gonzalez.
Hello, everyone. I had prepared remarks, but I feel like you've had people talking at you a lot, so maybe you don't need to hear all of that. So I'll just start with, hello, my name is Diana Gonzalez. I'm the president of the Central Brooklyn Independent Democrats. I am the chair of Community Board 7's Land Use and Landmarks Committee. And once upon a time, a little while back, I was the executive director of the Democratic Party of Brooklyn. And I'm running for Democratic State Committee and district leader in the 44th Assembly District. I'm running against a 31-year incumbent named Lori Nipel, who has not had, tell us what you really think, who has not had a challenge since she was first elected in 1992. And I think it's time. And so I guess I'd just like to open it up to questions from folks. Yeah.
Has Bobby Carroll endorsed you, or is she staying out of this?
He has not endorsed me yet. I remain hopeful.
It's still very, very early though.
Yeah,
Your
I
elections-
announced like 2 weeks ago.
Oh, okay.
Started. I am absolutely thrilled to have the endorsement of our very own Honorable Joan Millman. I'm deeply grateful for. So, yeah. What was that?
What neighborhoods are in?
So we have this weird little hook shape of Prospect Heights. And then we have Park Slope kind of south of partly 2nd, partly 6th Street. And then we have a little bit of Prospect Park South, or sorry, not Prospect, Park Slope South. I'm losing all my neighborhoods. That's not good. Windsor Terrace and Kensington with a touch of Borough Park and a touch of Victorian Flatbush. So it's pretty sprawling. Did I see a hand in the back from the council member?
I thought she was already a district leader. I thought when Brennan moved from Sunset Park to the 44th, she was the incumbent.
No, she wasn't.
She wasn't?
Yeah, she was elected in the re-app year. On Brennan's ticket with Jake Gold against Joni Oswine's ticket.
That's why you invite us to parties, this right here.
We are that exciting. Well, congratulations.
I was in 2nd grade. In our school presidential election, I voted for Bill Clinton. I've been a Democrat my whole life.
It was typical Lori stuff. Joni Oswine had only made her husband a judge, so she had to stab him in the back. And I'm Brennan's supporter, I could say that.
Well, you know, we don't endorse outside of the 52nd Assembly District, but we do leverage our groundwork and our feet and our donations when we can. So I'm sure you have a list, a sign
Yeah.
up list.
So I will say, you know, right now, we're just a couple seats away from being able to elect a new chairperson. And I think this district is the single most likely pickup opportunity in all of Brooklyn. So I'm definitely looking for as much support as possible. You know, Lori's got a lot of money behind her. She's a serious opponent. I'm taking this very seriously. So I'm looking for all the volunteers, all the campaign contributions, all of that stuff. So I've got Sharon Harkey over here as my campaign manager. She's got email sign up forms. She's got contribution forms, whatever you might possibly need. And I do have a fundraiser coming up on November 9th. So if you're interested in information about that, we're happy to share that as well.
Great. Well, you're of
else?
course welcome back. Anytime. There are many. We know you. So
Hi,
it's
yes.
not a tough sell.
I just want to say thank you for giving me the chance to come here today. You know, I always view IND as a kindred spirit and, you know, sibling in the next district. So it's great to be here with all of you and I appreciate it enormously.
Thank you. We appreciate you. Okay, exciting. I do want to recognize, we have some friends of the club, online. We have, Judge Sharon Hudson, as well as, Jackie Painter, the district leader from Sunset Park, and district leader Olivia Green has joined us, so welcome. So now, I know the president is speaking and a lot of us are answering to go watch his address, but we do have a lot of elected officials and elected official representatives in the room. So wanted to, give them a chance to pass them the mic. Are you on the phone?
Want to Zoom, but I'm.
Okay, would you like an update? Okay, great. If you have to be on that, we could bring back around to you. Okay, great. So I wanted to hand the mic over to our councilman. Councilman, Lincoln Ressler, welcome.
Great to be with all of you. Congrats on a great IND brunch a few weeks ago. And
Fabulous.
it really was fabulous. And congrats to everyone who helped organize it, to Alyssa, to Karen, to everyone. I know it takes a ton of work to put those events together. And it was just a great one. And the honorees, even Andrew Bernardus, were terrific. So just a few quick updates from me, but I'm happy to also not, if you want to leave. I mean, I can, I mean.
Yeah, you're
sure,
here,
we'll
why
do
not?
Quick and dirty. Quick and
Always
dirty.
watch my YouTube.
That's true. You can always watch on YouTube. While this is in the flesh. So I'm very concerned about some of the changes that are happening with the borough-based jail in downtown Brooklyn and Borum Hill. Folks may have seen that Mayor Adams has increased the planned size of the jail by 17% in terms of detainees. So it was planned to be for 886 people. Now he wants it to be for 1,040. And just as problematically, when the borough-based jail plan was designed, the idea was that 40% of all of the beds in the system would be therapeutic beds. And therapeutic beds are designed for people with serious mental illness, which a majority of people at Rikers Island have. We all know Rikers has been the largest psychiatric facility in the state for a very long time. But what did Mayor Adams do? He slashed the number of therapeutic beds at the Brooklyn Detention Center by half. So now what had been intended to be about 40% therapeutic beds in Brooklyn is now at about 20%. So we're pushing back aggressively on this. There have been a number of community workshops over the last 6 weeks or so, two at St. Francis, one last night at CB2, but I think have been productive. People have been giving meaningful input on the design of the facility, both the interior design, the exterior design, which I think is great because we want to better integrate the jail, which is an important civic function, into downtown Brooklyn, into Borum Hill. For too long, it's just been a building that's been separated from the community. There will be nonprofit ground floor uses, public plazas. It will be a much more bright and well-designed and light building. But it's really important that we guarantee humanity to the people who are there. And that's where I think the mayor is coming up terribly short. So there's going to be a lot more activism on that to come in the weeks and months ahead. It's a big concern of mine. Some positive news around the 33rd. We've been doing a lot around transit improvements. We have a new two-way busway that's coming in on Livingston Street in the next couple of weeks. So this should really speed up buses on Livingston. If you've ever tried to take a bus on Livingston, you've encountered more illegally parked cars than you can count. But 50,000 people ride the bus on Livingston Street every day. Livingston will be going one way as a result of this. We switched Schermerhorn to one way last year going eastbound. Livingston will now be going westbound. That was to accommodate the protected bike lane on Schermerhorn. We also were able to make some improvements recently at the Manhattan Avenue Bridge entrance for cyclists, where it used to be really dangerous to get on the bridge. We've expanded the area so that it's much easier for cyclists to get on and off, with which we didn't, and there's going to be some additional improvements on the Sand Street side in the spring. We also have been working hard with Joanne and others on some improvements on Atlantic Avenue. We're working hard to calm down traffic and to make it safer for everybody on Atlantic. We're making some real progress on the Borum Hill side. DOT and the mayor have been less cooperative on the Cobble Hill, Brooklyn Heights side, but we're going to keep pushing until we finally make Atlantic safe and improve pedestrian access into the park. I should probably, I should note that redistricting, well, I have an election too, actually, so that's a big. Numbers to vote. We've been doing subway stations and farmers markets and that kind of stuff. I actually have Jonathan's niece, who's a college student who's been helping me out, so thank you, Jonathan. She's amazing, as is everyone in the Cohen family. So we're out there, but the big change for us is that we're sadly losing a good chunk of the 52nd from the 33rd Council District. It will be well represented by Councilmember Hanif, but some of the changes that have occurred in our district is we lose Kiwanis and Wyckoff Gardens, we lose Howard. I'm sorry, Howard.
Not as sorry as I am.
In fact, as a result of redistricting, we lost all 7 of the nitrogen elements across our district, which is a real bummer. And So we're trying to think about some new ways that we're going to focus on equity in our district in the year ahead. One of the main ways that we're going to do that is on focusing on the highest need schools. We have at this point the wealthiest council district in Brooklyn, but we still have many public schools where 90% of the kids are living in poverty. And we have schools with PTAs that raise $1 million and less than a mile away, kids that are struggling mightily. And it doesn't make sense. It's not fair. What we're going to start doing is directing much more of our time, energy, and resources to lifting up and investing in those schools. So for our participatory budgeting this year, we've identified the 5 highest need K-8 schools that are either elementary schools or middle schools in our district. We're going to dedicate all of our participatory budgeting resources to those schools. We're going to use it as a way to engage parents and teachers and kids at those schools to get their best ideas about how we can invest and support those schools and make them better. And we hope that this is going to be a way to educate neighbors about some of the schools in our community that have a lot of potential, but really do need some extra support. And so that's going to be a big focus for us in the months ahead. I could keep talking at y'all, but I know you want to hear Joe Biden. I've been down with Justin 3 times, and I'm going to be down there at least that many more times. So hope we can it's going to be a close race. And so really just want to underscore every time we're out there knocking on doors, it really matters.
I walk through Cadman Plaza Park every day. That was a project fully funded by you. It looks fantastic. They got in, they got out. That was a home run.
Thank you so much.
You.
No, we're trying our best to keep the dogs off the turf, but the turf was in horrible shape. It was one of the top things I wanted to fund in my first year, and I'm really appreciative of the Parks Department for helping to execute it as quickly as they did. And January is supposed to be the month that we complete work on the Northern Oval. That will be a place where dogs can run around. We've got 25 new garbage cans in Cadman that are rat resistant to try and address some of the rat conditions that we've had there. And we're doing our best to really kind of invest in one of the great public squares at Cadman Plaza. One of the things I'm hoping that we can focus on for the next year ahead is Columbus Park, which needs to be renamed. But also I'm upsetting some people here and saying that, but it does. But it's one of the great it should be one of the great park spaces in Brooklyn, and it's super underutilized. We have a parking lot that is used by judges that is a park space, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. So we're going to be doing a lot of work on that with Borough President Reynoso, because Borough Hall sits in Columbus Park in the year ahead to try to revamp that space and make it much more accessible to the kids.
Skate park.
We're going to relocate the skaters. Find a separate designated space for the skaters. I think Joanne wants me to stop talking. All right.
Thank you for stopping by. I really appreciate that.
Congratulations to Diana.
Thank you.
And that it's really a couple seats that we need to flip to finally take down the machine once and for all. Let's win in the 44th, and let's win in the 56th, and let's win in the 54th, and let's win in all these winnable districts. God damn it, it's time. So thank you.
Joanne Simon, family member, sorry to have to squeeze you in, but he's running off to another very important meeting. But you wanted to say hello and give some updates in the meantime.
Thank you very much. National Infrastructure Bank Zoom beckons. So thank you, Lincoln, for being as brief as usual.
Oh, what politician is good at being brief? Not this one.
Well, I'm better at it than you.
Yeah, right.
So you gotta have fun with this, right? So a couple things, I'm not gonna go on about the usual neighborhood, the Gowanus and the Gowanus Canal and the BQE and all of that at Atlantic Avenue. We are still working on some other things, including Atlantic Yards. I'm not going to bore you with that. A couple of things, one of the bills I've been working on is a lockdown drill bill that I've been working on with Senator Granardes, where we would reduce the mandated number of lockdown drills, active shooter lockdown drills in New York State from 4 to 1, with the discretion to the school district to make that determination for themselves if they need more, because more and more data is coming out that in fact the lockdown drills are actually more traumatizing to children than not. School shootings are still extremely rare, less than 1% throughout the country. So, and we have never had one in New York. So the benefit, there's a benefit to kids having a clue what to do, but there doesn't seem to be much benefit to the repeated practice. And it's also has not been age appropriate and trauma informed and whatnot. So really, the bill addresses best practices, and we've been working closely with state ed on this and with the Rockefeller Institute, who is doing research on this kind of situation as well. And so hopefully we will be able to get to yes on a couple of things and get this passed this session. It's passed in the Senate, but whatever. You know, we still got to get it passed in the Assembly, and also working on blood alcohol content to reduce the blood alcohol content for driving while intoxicated to 0.05, which is really what the NTSB has been recommending for years. It is the standard used throughout 100 countries throughout the world. So the US is way behind. New York is behind. We're trying to get that done. We do have sort of a middle ground of driving while ability impaired, which covers any kind of substance. But the reality is we don't even know how to test for those things very much. If somebody pulls you over for driving in a dangerous way, that is exactly the same. We don't change anything that we do. We would just actually charge you with driving with intoxication at a lower level, which we know already from extensive studies. There are already cognitive and psychomotor impacts with 0.05. So we're looking to get that done. We had a meeting with the NTSB today, and we're really working with a coalition of people for supporting that. And then the other thing I just want to mention, and I just got a text message, which might have been from Susanna. It's not. But
Telling you to be brief? Did she text you to be brief?
She texts me and I don't realize it. So anyway, the other thing I just want to mention, which I mentioned to the board, is could you actually respond to this text message? Tell him I'll be right with.
For Seamus or?
Yes.
Seamus.
Anyway,
Rank has its privilege.
joking, it's the National Infrastructure Bank. So anyway, and that is that, you know, as many of you know, I have been talking about kids with dyslexia, about reading disabilities, and about the teaching of reading, and how really it all stems from the fact that we haven't done a good enough job giving our teachers the tools they need to know how to differentiate instruction. And so in reality, they've been taught a way of teaching reading that doesn't actually address the way children's brains process reading. So we are now part of a cohort where we have gotten every education player in the state on board to move this aircraft carrier that is the way every teacher has been taught, most teachers, the way schools of education have been addressing this issue. And so we have the education, state ed, SUNY, CUNY, the regents, to all together moving in the same direction. And over the next year, we will be developing a state plan for how we would go about changing this, educating teachers who are already out in the field, but also making sure that schools of education are implementing the science of reading in the programs that they use to teach their teachers how to teach reading. And I'm the legislative designee to the steering committee, so I'm going to be very involved in that effort. And I will keep you guys up to date as there's any information, but we're just starting. It was just launched about, a week and a half ago. And I'm really very, very excited, because one of the things that is hardest to do is make major policy change if you are battling. And where higher ed has been doing it this way, and they're in a different political universe, they don't really have anything to do with general ed. It's like parallel universes. And you really do need to get everybody on board. So we have everybody on board. And that's really a major deal. That is like really unusual to have that happen. So I'm very grateful for the people who've been doing this work, for the opportunity to serve in this capacity and to really make this change. Because as I've been saying for many years, if we teach our kids to read, we can empty our prisons and we can change the world. So that is my presentation. Thank you very much.
Just gives you my best.
Doing the good work. Thank you, Joanne. Okay, and to round us out for the evening, we have the Director of Community and External Affairs, Kevin Williams from Dan Goldman's office. I'm sure your boss is stuck in Albany being one of the 212. I'm so sorry. Yeah, Washington. I know where the capital is, guys. But I'm sure that's where he is. But yeah, give us an update. What's going on?
Thank you so much. It's the first time I've done this, so thank you for having us. I'm just gonna give two quick things. First off, I want to say a lot of people in the community have reached out to our office and people have seen him. I think a lot of people saw the New York Times interview he did just a week or so ago, asking if he's okay. Thank you for that. It's a very unique situation where you take your kids to Israel for the first time and that happens. And that's just traumatic. I just have no other words for it. So thank you for everyone who reached out to us and said, you know, I hope the congressman's okay. As all of you know, we do not have a speaker, so nothing can move at this particular moment. But I want to give just two quick updates and I'll be actually very brief. One of them is about the congressman's call to Egypt, the ambassador for Egypt for safe zones and humanitarian aid in Gaza. So we just did this just literally on the 18th, which was yesterday. The letter was sent to the ambassador for Egypt to support and facilitate safe zones in southern Gaza and enable humanitarian aid, which the president has just called for. So that's the biggest thing I wanted to say. And then the second thing is I just wanted to relay a message from the congressman for his support on the military, for a statement on the military operations in Gaza. You can read this online, but I'm just going to read a few quick sentences of it. In the wake of Hamas's brutal terrorist attack that has taken the lives of at least 1,300 people in Israel, including at least 27 American citizens, it is incumbent upon Congress and the Biden administration to provide whatever military, security, and diplomatic support Israel needs to protect herself and eradicate Hamas, a terrorist organization whose governing charter explicitly calls for the genocidal elimination of Jewish people in the state of Israel. As Israel carries out its obligation to defend itself with a just and legitimate military response against Hamas, it is of the utmost importance that we as a global community recognize that our fight is with Hamas, not with nonviolent Palestinians in Gaza who are also suffering under the brutal yoke of Hamas's evil oppression. That fight must be pursued within the humanitarian confines of the laws of war. So you can read the rest of it. A few more paragraphs, but I won't bore you. I know that all of you have been doing great work in the community. Please keep it up. If you need me, please reach out to me. I'm at the Manhattan office, but I live here in Park Slope, so he also works for me too. All the time. Thank you so much, everyone.
Okay, and just like that, I think we are done with all of our social business of the club. Before we close out, just a couple of sneak previews. So next month, I know we talked a lot about local politics this week because our elections are starting up soon. But ING always planning ahead, playing three-dimensional chess. We know that petitioning for next year's elections will start as soon as the New Year's starts. So we've invited President Biden and his campaign to come visit us at our November meeting, which will either be the 15th or the 16th. The executive board has not yet decided whether to move our meeting up a day to accommodate for county's policy planning meeting or not, but more on that later. But we have confirmed both the New York head of operations for the campaign, as well as a surrogate to be announced from the president and the vice president's campaign to come join us. And assuming no other Democrats get in the race, we'll hear from the president's surrogate, or who knows, the president could pop in on Zoom. You never know what happens here. And then we will likely vote and turn that into an endorsement meeting as well. So this is an announcement of the endorsement meeting because we have to constitutionally announce it earlier because we won't meet in December as per usual. We skip December for the holidays. Then we can have the presidential endorsement all lined up. So we can take petitions at the start of the meeting. And then we'll have our reorganizing for the club and then my term will be over and I'll be very sad. So that's just a little sneak preview. of the November general meeting. So make sure to mark your calendars. It should be a really good event. In the meantime, we do have, once again, the day of action on Saturday, October 28th for Justin Brannon at his district office. So let's all caravan down together on the R train and show up for him. And then on Monday, again, we have the phone bank for reproductive rights in Ohio, which we're super excited about. I think I got through everything. Any questions generally? Yes.
I just want to say something about something I'm really perturbed about involving one of our endorsed candidates, council member Hanif, who since we endorsed her, has voted against a resolution condemning anti-Semitic violence. This week tweeted out the root cause of this war is the illegal, immoral, and unjust occupation of the Palestinian people. The occupation has brought violence toward Israelis and Palestinians for over 75 years. I'll note the occupation has only existed for 56 years. So what she's saying is that Israel is the occupation. There's nothing in her statement at all condemning Hamas. She followed it up with retweeting someone who blamed the hospital bombing on the Israelis. Today, she blamed the government of the United States at its top level for the killing of the 6-year-old. So apparently Joe Biden is morally responsible. She used the term blood on her hands for the death of a 6-year-old in Chicago by some lunatic, but Hamas is not responsible for the murder, kidnapping, and rape of 1,500 civilians. And I have to say, I'd like to make a motion now to condemn Council Member Hanif for her actions in the past couple of weeks. I think they've been repugnant and that she should get a message from the largest Democratic club in her district.
Second that.
Third.
Okay, so I think we have to open conversation about this. I guess we're all not getting home in time. I appreciate the conversation. We're not really prepared to talk about this today. I mean, the council.
This is our last meeting before the general election. If we don't do it now, we're basically condoning it.
Yeah, I agree. We should discuss this.
Do we, somebody have a copy of any of this?
I have a copy of the tweets. Would you like me to read all three?
I don't know. I don't feel comfortable condemning our member.
Cause of the war was the illegal, immoral, and unjust occupation.
Point of order. Sorry, you're speaking out of turn. I think you should have brought this up prior to the meeting, so we could have organized around this. I don't think this is an appropriate way of handling this.
I think you're trying to silence dissent from anything that doesn't comport with your vision of wokeness.
I don't think you know my vision of wokeness, Howard. I think we should return to.
I've been countered
Excuse me.
before, Alyssa.
Yes, because you're speaking out of turn, number one. Number two, you're not being very respectful. And number three, you didn't give the opposition a chance to say anything. And you could have done that, Howard. You have my number. You could have asked me to bring this up and set an agenda.
Well, the last tweet I saw today, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have motioned to table the motion. Do I have a second? The president can.
Third. Somebody from the floor.
Oh, thank you.
I'll table the motion.
Do I have a second? Second, third. Okay, discussion?
Well, that's motion to take.
I respectfully.
Discuss motions to take.
Oh, you don't discuss. motions.
That's right, motions, it's right, motions to table are not debatable, so go straight to a vote.
Okay. So do we vote on tabling?
Yes.
Okay, I'm not a parliamentarian expert. Okay, so all in favor of tabling the motion, raise your hand.
1, 2, 3,
You got it.
5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. It's 11.
Anyone on Zoom want to vote? We have two hands.
It's 13 voting to table.
Okay, opposed?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Anyone on Zoom want to table?
I'm opposed to tabling.
That's 9.
I've heard of a motion at a club meeting in my 50-some years. Being ruled out order.
Oh, sorry, I missed that. What was that? Party?
That's 2. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. It's 10 in favor. It's 11 in favor, 10 opposed.
So 11.
Table. Shown and Connor.
Yes.
Okay, so the motion to table has passed. correct?
Correct, by one vote, yeah.
By one vote.
I certainly think this should be an issue that we should discuss
I agree.
and vote on. And I think we also have to consider some of the comments made by our district leader as well at our next meeting.
Okay,
It's important.
yes, Jason.
This is a suggestion, not a motion, because I actually agree with Howard on the substance.
Two.
It's the wrong way to feel it, but we should invite her to come to the next meeting to account for this, because I've thought a lot of statements made by a lot of our local leaders have been frankly outrageous, and she represents the club, the area we do. We should call her to explain it.
Yes, I.
Oh, hold on.
Agree. I think.
It's a good
He voted I think in the, so that's 11 to 11, so the motion fit.
Is a voting member.
She's not a member.
Yeah.
Online.
Oh, you're right, okay, so Jackie, I apologize, you're not a member, so you can't vote.
I think, I think.
No,
she's
she's done 3 meetings.
She's done 3 meetings.
Yeah, so
Okay,
it's,
sorry, Jackie, I'm sorry.
yeah,
Okay,
okay, yeah, I did the list in my head, yeah, she's done 3 meetings, so it's actually the
She
motion.
said she's a member.
But she's not according to our. Well.
Then it would be, if it's tied, then the motion fails.
If it's tied, the motion fails anyway.
So the motion to table fails.
Yeah, so that means it's back on,
We're discussing it.
yeah,
But she's not a member. She's not.
yes.
Yeah, well,
Yeah, but-
that means it's a tie.
Check the
And
list.
that means motion to table fails.
I'm gonna check on this.
Well, we have to see if she's.
Oh, wait, she is a member.
She is
But
a member, that's
but
so.
she's not qualified
To vote. She's a member. but not
She didn't do 2 meetings, or, but she's, this would be her
Is
third.
this just a?
This would be her third, so she would now be able to vote.
Does this apply only to endorsements or to everything? I
It would
could
be to everything.
okay.
a good
Excuse
point was
me, are
made
you
about-
telling me I can't vote?
Sorry, 1 second. I think
My vote doesn't count?
Because
No, we're not saying about you, Marty, we're talking about Jackie Painter, not to put you on the spot, Jackie, I'm sorry.
I think what we had just discussed, that bringing this up in a more organized fashion at the November meeting, when we have, the time to invite the people who are being questioned and, they have the right to defend themselves and we can have a more fulsome discussion, is the appropriate course of action. And Howard, I wish you had brought this up before the meeting, so we could have discussed and planned around this, but I don't think
I would,
at
Can I make a
8:45
friendly,
is
make a friendly amendment to Howard's motion?
Sure.
For the moment,
I don't know. if
much as I like your idea, nothing's gonna change before the election, so I think we make a
Well,
motion.
I'm asking people
Talk
to
about
vote for my, right in my mother-in-law, Miriam Turk, a 97-year-old Holocaust survivor, on the Shoah Enough party line, because really, I don't think, that we should blame dead Jews for dead Jews. Thank you.
Yeah, I would just say, can we also add it to the agenda of the executive board meeting? Because I think, agree with Jason, Howard, you have a lot of points that I think deserve to be heard. I do think people should have the opportunity to review the information that's being discussed. And if the council member wants to come and respond, she should be able to come and respond. So I agree, we should have a conversation. I think the board should discuss a more appropriate way to do it to make sure that people are heard. Includes people who are disturbed by what she said and includes the council member.
I agree, and the board chair just agreed to add it to the agenda, and for everyone in the room, all of our executive board meetings are open to the public. Of course, when we go into voting session, they are closed to the public.
And open for district leader to come as well.
Correct, yes.
Okay.
Seamus,
I have a point of parliamentary inquiry since it is, okay.
go ahead, yeah.
So this would actually go to Hal, a second VP, because he's the parliamentarian for our constitution. Is it appropriate for there to be, for this to have been brought up without resolution format brought before the body
I
beforehand?
believe it can be, and in particular, the fact that this is not information that was even known, these tweets, this information.
But it would be prior to the meeting, that we had no language for any sort of motion, any sort of resolution to condemn.
Sorry, say it again.
We had no language.
I think I appreciate the parliamentarian intuitiveness, but I think we're all in agreement, and Howard, I do appreciate you bringing this up. I do wish you brought it up sooner than, 8:45. Close out the meeting. But yeah.
How could you bring it up sooner?
Okay, we don't have to put him on the spot.
Well, I don't feel on the spot at all. If it's December 11th, 1941, I'm not sure how much more information we need.
Okay, so anyway, we have, going back to the club reminders, want to end on a bit of a brighter note. I wanted to thank our speakers for coming. and our elected officials for stopping by.
Was the
And-
motion tabled? Was Howard's motion tabled?
Yes, and just so everyone's super clear, we agreed to discuss it both at our next executive board meeting, which is the first Thursday in November. I don't have the date in front of me. And then as well as our general meeting on either the 15th or the 16th of November, we'll bring it to a proper vote once we have all the information and can discuss it then.
So what was the vote again? It was 11-11?
It was 11-11, but it looks like there was a motion to, or there was an amendment made to bring.
There wasn't an amendment.
That was-
It was 11-10, and you were talking about discounting Jackie's vote, and you didn't, so passed. I understand that.
Maybe adjourn?
The amendment was after the vote was.
A second? Okay, thank you. Thank you all for coming tonight. I appreciate it. And we'll see you next month, if not.
Shopping bags, and I just.
Excuse me, is Rodney's in charge of this meeting? Is that why we just do this? Shut off the microphones?
I mean, it was if I was so close to me, you know, I'm trying to rush things along anyway.
Kids or speed.
I think-